it out. It's nice to be an hour.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I could have walked through. Kind of give me the one building. He asked me for a few things. It's, yeah. What? Are you the guest speaker? Well, cool. My name's Mark Overson.
Nice old one.
I'm sorry, I have time. Oh, but I wanted to at least come by. Thank you for being here. I saw the write-up about it. What a cool. Yeah. Yeah. So do you, I have a question. Make quick. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have funds? I mean, is that part of your life? And you knew that going in? Yeah. You wanted to do toys? Okay. Oh, guy, so Ben's earlier. Oh, really? That's pretty interesting. Well, nice to meet you. Yep. I have 5:30 on the other side of campus. I wanted to at least come by and say hello. And I want to you get a lot of real estate here, man. What pardon me? Yeah, you got a lot of real estate. That's really nice. Creative clutter.
It's like a science student once you sit there. I want to be next to you. You guys make all the demos? One of us. Oh, good. Well, I was going to say, I'm guessing it was Dave.
Three. Yeah. She said, "Whoa, we're just one time. I was here, so." It only takes one. Okay, nice to meet you. See you.
I can't hear a thing.
I like it.
Yeah, that's the only way my wife will eat the plain ones. She will eat the filled ones, cold, but you only eat the plain ones.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk about dumping or any of that.
Oh,
Krispy
no.
Kreme's gonna be there, I know.
Yeah.
Have I never been there? I like a little, I like a little one. I still have like some really big.
I just saw it. I saw it.
I grew up right next to Mattel, so.
Crispy was there. Ooh, hot crispy wings.
So of course, you know, we were.
She's happy. I'm very happy now that I realize here, just for a couple of days, I don't think I even done a lot of tipping. I was like, yeah. People I tried to be like, oh, I'm not interested. One of our colleagues was like, she's like, I've got a tip jar that I would ask when everybody leaves. I mean, it's all in an hour, I would too. I know. Yeah. I think her first job was expecting. Yeah, that's not, yeah, she didn't negotiate anything, they're like, okay, well, learn something. You are. Then she had a total meltdown when school started, because she was like, it's not worth it, though.
So sorry, I missed you back in the studio. We had some technical problems.
Oh, what is better to take care of this?
Yeah. I would love to see your order.
Just a few years. All right.
Did you say don't sit in front? Okay, no, in front, no, sit in front.
I guess you got really good at it. Did you get really good at it?
Okay, good afternoon. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first of all, thanks for being here. So we have, this is, I don't even remember, 5th or 6th speaker this semester. They're all very good. So today I'm very happy to introduce Audrey, our own Audrey. She was one of you guys. She was one of you guys a few years ago. She graduated from here with a Master of Industrial Design degree. Also, she did her undergrad here. So 6 years here, right? It's like 6 years here. And she wanted to be a toy designer, but she was doing, and she became one. So she became two. So she flew all the way from Los Angeles to here to come home to industrial design. I'm sure you are happy to see our new home.
Absolutely.
Like homecoming for her, and she's gonna share her experience in what making toys happen. I think many of our some of students are interested in becoming toy designers, but there's so many things industrial design can do, but also including toy design. So we have all this stuff. You're gonna learn a lot from this presentation. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. So thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. This is super exciting to see you guys here. And like it says, I make toys. So we're gonna talk about toys today. So I'm Audrey. My name is Audrey Watanabe. This is my business card. Right down all the information quickly. Okay. So this is my actual business card. And like I said, I work for Mattel. So they're the toy makers. Okay. And I've had a unique experience to work in not just toy design, but in a ton of different departments at Mattel. So I'm going to talk about some of those today. So you guys know Mattel, and maybe you don't realize how much Mattel owns and all their iconic brands. So these are just some of their brands and some of their toys that they have. So, you know, like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Fisher Price, right? Uno. They also own American Girl Dolls. So they own a ton. And it's really cool. So everyone always wants to know what it's like to work for a toy company, right? So it's pretty much what you think it is. It's super fun. It's really, really fun. This is our El Segundo office. This is the Mattel headquarters. This is where I work. So, and the office really looks like this. So our elevator is really the Barbie Dream House elevator. Okay. They have a 2-story Hot Wheels track. We play it all the time. Right? Everyone's always playing. There's toys everywhere. This is our VP at Duncan at the top. That's his office. Everyone's office looks like that, so it's probably not quite that organized. But it's kind of fun. And there's a ton of talented people that make models and sketches and marketing plans and development plans. It's pretty cool. how'd you get into toys? How do you make a toy? And then what makes a good toy? Okay? So we'll look at each of these. So the first one, how did you get into toys? Well, what Blue said, I went to house design, right, for undergrad, and there was one project stuck out, right? So this was in my sophomore studio, okay, and it was a project where you had to design a toy based off of a Leonardo da Vinci invention. So I designed an arts and crafts. You have to DIY, you color it, you assemble it, you put it on a window, and it makes a cool kaleidoscope in 50 years. So that one project changed my life. But of course, you graduate and you have to get a job. You got to figure out what you want to do. So I moved to Chicago. So I moved to Chicago for a totally different industry and product development, doing something totally different for about 5 years. But I kept thinking about that toy project and how cool it was. So I decided to come back for my master's degree. So I came back in 2013 to study toys and to do a deep dive on toy design. So I focused those years on designing toys to benefit kids' childhood learning, specifically in design thinking skills. So it's cool for 2 years, deep dive on toys, and then of course you gotta find a job again. So I was looking around at where all the toy companies needed toy companies to be, where should I go, what am I gonna do? And I realized that all of them kind of had this mecca in Southern California, right? So, but that's pretty intimidating. I didn't really know what to do, so I was like, well, there's a ton of toy companies in Southern California, right? There's probably a chance that I get a job there, right? And even if I don't, there's all these movie and animation studios, and they have consumer products division, so it should be okay. So I took a calculated legal case, and I moved to California without a job and not knowing it. And it worked out. So my first job in the toy industry, I actually worked for Rosart. I don't know if you guys know Rosart. Very cool. So I worked in kids' arts and crafts. It was like perfect. Like kids' art supplies, anything that had to do with like making and creativity. So I made a lot of coloring books, a lot of flow boards, art supplies, vinyl figures in color. It was super cool, right? It was pretty impressive. Well, within 2 months of me working for that company, they were bought by Mattel. So I went from this small toy division, small toy company in Southern California to now working for one of the biggest toy companies in the world. It was crazy. Right? So overnight, I was suddenly exposed to not just being an arts and crafts, but Mattel has core competencies and is an industry leader in 6 different categories. Now, in these categories, there's over 30 subcategories of toys. That's a huge amount. And in those subcategories, there's tons of brands in each one of those. Mattel owns hundreds of brands. So I had a great opportunity to work on a lot of these brands in a lot of different categories. So then that kind of leads me to like, that's how I kind of got to Mattel by happenstance. And then the next question people ask me is, how do you make a toy? So beyond this toy design, which is super cool and being a designer, there's actually a lot to making a toy, a lot of different disciplines. And like I said before on my first slide, we'll go through some of those requirements and show you how. Okay. So first, 65% of Mattel's products every year are brand new. We make thousands of products every year. 65% of them are new. That's a huge amount of volume. Okay. So for a typical, just so for some context, background on toys, so every single toy, the life cycle of that, the development cycle is about 18 months. Okay, so a year and a half. So within the toy industry, there's 2 official launch seasons. There's spring and there's fall. And about 75% of Mattel's annual income comes in the fall because of Christmas, right? Because of the holidays. Okay? And within each season, spring and fall, there's 3 different development stages. Okay? So there's the strategy where you're trying to figure out what you're gonna make. There's design and development, or the actual making of the product. And then there's production, which is manufacturing. And like I said, we make a ton of stuff, so you can work up to 3 years of development at one time. Okay? So that's a lot of time and a lot of timelines to try to work within. So right now, that's kind of where we are. It's really messy, pretty busy at work right now, but you make it work. Okay? So in saying that, how do you make a toy? It's a team effort, So to be fair and to be honest, this is an oversimplification of the whole process. There are a lot more people that are involved. But just in general, from strategy, design and development, and direction, these 11 departments are always involved in every single toy. So from the idea to putting it on shelf, everyone works together to make it happen. Okay? So we can follow the toy kind of through the process, and I kind of want to tell you a little bit about each department, because maybe you think you want to be a toy designer now, but there's so much more about it, like creating a toy and being creative. You can offer to your toys, but maybe something interesting. So it starts with sales. I know that feels kind of lame. It starts with sales, but it does. It's because the salespeople have this direct connection to the buyer, and that's important because the buyer knows what they want in their file, and ultimately, retail buyers buy from manufacturers like the cup. So you kind of not have to know what they want and what they're looking for. And the salesperson is the person that kind of drives that. So they go to the buyer, they figure out what they want, okay, and ultimately, the salesperson is the one that's kind of pitching the new ideas or the products to the retailers, and they're the ones that can input forecasts. Okay, so forecast is like they take a bet on how many pieces they think that they can sell of the toy, which ultimately tells you the budget you have for that product line. Next thing is marketing. Honestly, marketing really does drive strategy. So they create what we call slots and racks. Okay, so they identify white space in the market according to what a salesperson kind of offers, and then doing their own market research. Okay? So they create what we call line architecture for every single brand. So they determine the number of slots, so the number of toys that need to be made, like 3 toys, 15 toys, that's specific. The number of slots, the price point for each one of those toys, and then the target cost or cost allotment that you're allowed to work with in each toy. Very specific, very detailed, right?
So Audrey, I'm not sure everyone knows what white space is.
Sure. Also, anyone can build anything out of any time. So white space being, it's like a gap in the market, right? So something that someone's not going after. Maybe it's something that a competitor is not doing. Maybe it's something a competitor is doing, but there's not enough competition. Maybe it's a trend that we want to go after. So these are like white space opportunities of where we strategically want to play. Good question. So once we get through like knowing exactly what we need to do, that's where the designer comes in, right? So the designer is the one that takes the slots and racks. They know how many things they have to make. They know what price it has to be for, and they're the ones that are like the blue sky thinkers. They're the ones that take trends and ideas and then turn them into real products. Okay, and this is a long process of back and forth. Okay? They also do a lot of art direction. So you're not doing all the designing by yourself. You have other people that help you and work with you. So you have to do a lot of art direction again. So you work with freelancers, you work with vendors, you work with mall makers. Okay? If there's a ton of product you have to make, and to juggle all that, you need help. Also at Mattel, you lean into your strengths. Some people are good at sketching, some people are good at mall making. You work with your team to get it done. Then there's the project manager. So they're the timeline and the cost police. They're the one that's trying to make everyone move together, right? So we gotta get this done, we gotta hit these milestones, we have to make it happen. So they play the bad guy a lot. Okay? And they're also the main point of contact for our China transport. So looking at this is the strategy portion of it. And ultimately, marketing, product design, project management, follow a toy throughout the entire process. Okay, other departments might come in here and there, but these 3 people are the 3 key people that follow one toy all the way through. And then from there, consumer insights. So now we have a toy idea, right? It's a sketch or something. And then we bring in everything at Mattel is based in research and data. So we have a whole imagination center, okay? And that's where they bring ideas and products, and they test everything with kids. So like all those things where it's like they double pane glass, and you're watching them play with toys and stuff, that's what it is. Or you're interacting with kids, you're talking, we we really do that, right? We also talk to parents, like, what is mom want? What is dad want? Really important. So we also test strategy, the appeal of it, okay? And all that stuff is then analyzed and reports are written out. About markets, by trends, according to time, okay? Once you have an idea of the good, you now have to make it real, okay? So that's an engineer's coming, so tech specs. Now, when I say engineers, that's like a general thing. There's tons of engineers. There's mechanical, there's robotics, there's lights and sounds, there's all kinds of stuff, okay? But they are the ones that do the tech specs that then eventually get turned over to Asia, or Asia, okay? So they make things work. And then another bad guy, quote unquote bad guy, QA. We gotta make sure we don't hurt anybody, right? So they know all of the safety regulations, smoking hazards, sharp points, what else? Chemical testing, anything you can think of, they know all their requirements, and they're the ones that are dictating what warnings you have to put on the boxes, okay? They also do technical testing of products, so they're the ones that do like the transition test, durability test, life cycle test. They're the ones that are telling you what time frame and what moment Play-Doh is going to start molding. That's what their job is to figure out all that technical stuff. Then you get into package engineer. So they make box. But it's a lot more complicated than that. So they do the structure of the box. They pick the materials, they pick the shape. They also do merchandising displays. So in store, if there's like some kind of display that somebody goes in, or when you go to Walmart in the holidays, the big corrugated drop-ins, they design those too, and they determine the number of pieces that go into the and then you have the graphic designer. So they do anything that's 3D. So graphic designers are really interesting in the sense that they do, of course, the logos and the brand style guides and all that stuff. But they, and the graphics for the box, the art on the box. But they also do product 3D art. So like Barbie's clothes, like patterns. It's 3D art. So graphic designers do that. They also work on the tedious stuff like labels on markers or instructions during charges, all of them. Along with the copywriter. So the graphic designer does all the art and the layout, but the copywriter does all the words. Okay? So they come up with all the product names and the taglines. They write all the copy that goes on all of the instruction sheets. They also, if you have a really big program, it's going to be like, let's say, a cartoon or some kind of content in some way. They usually work with content producers to develop that script and that content. And then from there we have a production manager. So this is an oversimplification for sure. But there's several production managers on each project that you communicate with. And obviously they manage the manufacturing processes. They do the sourcing of certain materials. They also do all the negotiating with the factory on cost with tooling, raw materials, all that stuff. They also support design and engineering throughout the whole process. And they also ensure that the product is on the boat in time. So everyone's working towards the ship date. So, and this is kind of a cool video. I got the opportunity to go to Asia to manage a couple projects. So this is a factory making slime, which is super cool. You don't really think about it, right? But someone has to formulate that, right through the line, pack it out. Oh, cool. So the question of how do you make a toy, it's not really you, it's a we thing, it's a team sport, right? So, and everyone has to work together, and everyone has to be communicating to get your job done. For the full 18 minutes. So then the next question is what makes a good toy? So what makes a good toy? Good design, good features, it's beautiful, matches the license, it's on brand, right? Good marketing, good promotional material, equals good sales, I want to get really good value at the right price point, so parents want to buy it, right? It hits cost. But ultimately, all that stuff is important, but it has to be fun. If it's like a lame toy, like it's not gonna sell. If a kid doesn't want it, it's not gonna work, right? So our world because it's true. Okay? Everything we do has kids in mind, right? So kids are the most honest audience you're ever gonna have. Okay? They can be your biggest advocate. So if they love something, they're gonna share it with their friends and they're gonna tell people about it. And ultimately, parents want their kids to be happy. And so parents, if a kid loves a toy, a parent's gonna invest in it. Okay? Then saying that, not all kids are the same. Right? Just like one. Everyone has separate interests. So we study fun. That's what we do. Okay, we study fun and play. So the question is, how do you design fun, which is really complex and it's where it gets really interesting. Where a toy is not just a toy. Okay? So looking at each one, these are all kind of core considerations that all kind of work together in an interesting way to make for a good toy. Okay? So the first one is like entertaining and enjoyable. That's pretty obvious. I don't know what that is. Okay? So play. So play is the actual activity that's motivating you having fun. Okay? So behavior, now we're starting to go deeper into the specific interactions during play that, are very specific to certain toys, certain types of inputs. Okay? And once you start to identify those, you can now start to measure those to people's learning, right? So a toy then becomes something bigger, a bigger purpose to it. Because you see a behavior, you start to realize it, you then start measuring it, and you can make products then expand on that or amplify that. And then with that, you can then apply that. So then a toy has the potential to affect a kid in a kid's world. We all know a toy that we have when we were a kid that like we love, right? There's a deeper purpose. So like I said, we study play and fun. So these are actually core play patterns, okay, across any category of toy. Okay, see, these are tried and true. This is what we explore. Okay, and if you look at them, certain products obviously cater to these play patterns. I mean, look at it. You could think about yourself, right? So maybe you were a building and creating kid. I loved arts and crafts, still do, right? Maybe you like Legos, okay? Or maybe you like playing outside. You're an active play kid, right? Pretty cool. Or sensory play. You like Go, you like slime, you like sticky stuff. These are all core play patterns that we all speak to and we all study and we try to make the toys match in our lives. Okay? And then until we call that purposeful play. So a toy isn't just a toy, it's a vessel for actually like inducing learning and resonating and cause and effect and resonating with you in your life. Right? So Mattel's purpose statement and purposeful play is an aim to empower the next generation to explore the wonder of childhood and reach their full potential. So they're not just Mattel makes toys, they have a deeper meaning and message. So then, to kind of show this, a couple of examples. Okay. Barbie is a doll, right? It's more than a doll, so it induces storytelling, styling with characters, sometimes self-styling, so it's not just a doll. Barbie's mission is be anything. That's the deeper message. That's the deeper purpose. That's why Barbie resonates. You can be anything. Okay? Hot Wheels. Pretty cool, racing and chasing. Makes sense. Collecting. If you know a Hot Wheels kid, they probably like 50 Hot Wheels, right? And then trial and error. Okay? Testing facts and whatnot. Okay? So their purpose is challenge accepted. They're all about you see a problem in your life, you need it head on. That's what Hot Wheels is. That's what's arguing. That's their purpose. I love this kid. Okay. And this cute quickie baby. So active play. It's a toddler, right? It's sensory play, right? Their whole thing is the best possible start. So Fisher Price stands for giving families the best possible start at the same time in life. So they're not just toys. They have meaning. They have purpose. And that's what we drive. So in conclusion for this section, we had 3 questions, and now I have 3 answers, real quick. So how'd you get into toys? What's into your gut? Okay. What you're interested in now, as a freshman, as a sophomore, as whatever level you're at, has meaning, and pay attention to it. Okay. So how do you make a toy? You don't make toys, it's a team effort. Collaboration. You have to learn how to work with people. And then what makes a good toy? Purpose. What makes a good product? Purpose. What's the story? Purposeful play. And honestly, for toys, it's about having fun. Okay? So now we're going to get into actual product design and things that I've done. So these are just a few things. These are some of my favorite things that I've helped make. So like I said, it's a team effort. So I'm sure you guys have seen some of these. I got some of these little guys up here. This little cookie right here. I love it. Okay. So this is value channel offering. So I manage all of Mattel's value channel offerings. Okay. So that was across all licenses and brands. So when I say value channel, that means anything that's like 5 and below. Okay. And the whole purpose of this is that Mattel feels, and I agree with, that any kid at any socioeconomic class should have the opportunity to play. Play is fair. Not everyone can afford the highest quality of Mattel products. Mattel's a premium brand. Okay? Not everyone can afford it. So we need to make offerings where every kid has a chance to have a Mattel product. Okay? So we go with the highest quality of product for our value players. Okay? So try and create one of these for $1. You really have to be strategic in what you're choosing. Okay? So looking at this is another example of how this kind of translates. So these are micro Pixie, and these are Barbie micro Pixie. Okay, so this is an 11-inch fashion doll. All fashion dolls, all Barbies are 11 inches. Okay, so but not everyone can afford a $15 Barbie, so we make a 2-inch one. That's $1, right? So a lot of times this is the first time that a kid is going to have this product in their hand. It's kind of like a gateway drug. If they have a good experience with this tiny rendition of Barbie, they're more likely to go out and buy an actual Barbie. Okay? And saying that, you can't tarnish Barbie's reputation, so you have to work with the brand team to get approvals along the entire process. Okay? And also, we try to make it as close to the actual Barbie as possible, down to the skin tone, eye colors, lip colors, all that has to be considered. It has to be on brand. Okay? This is another value channel. This is pretty cool. This is how we do with licenses, which is a whole another level of complexity. Okay. So as far as the process of developing a toy for a license, it goes in like 4 main stages. Okay. So the first stage is it starts with a sketch, right? So usually it has what we call a lineup with it. So you show one product, and then you show what the rest of them in the series is going to look like. Make sure it's consistent. So you have to get approval on the concept and start. The next part is going to sculpt. So these are called turns. This is where the licensor sees every single angle of the product and what it's going to do. Okay? So this, I don't know if you can see it, but it shows where the wire is in this. So they want to know everything about it. Okay? Then you go to a deco approval. So deco is all the color that's put on it, goes down to the detail. And you have to make sure that the deco in this matches the deco they approve. They will find out if it does. Makes the process very long. Okay? So then from there, it's also they check all the packaging. You go through the same process for packaging. Concept, the structure, the graphics, the whole thing. Okay? So these are pretty cool. These are venue binders for obvious reasons. Very cool. So diving a little bit deeper into this, right? So this is interesting because it's an internal brand, but we still work the same way. We have to get approval. So these are Bendy Masters of the Universe. Okay? So once again, starts with a sketch. Okay? To be fair, like I said, it's a team sport. You lean into what you're good at. This is my friend Ben Hitmar's sketch. He's amazing. I don't have that aesthetic, but he does. So you work with your team, right? So he did that sketch, and then you go through what we call markups. So this is at the sculpt stage. This can be anywhere from 1, if you're lucky, doubtful, to like 15 rounds of like working with a licensor or with the brand team at every single detail of a tool, right? What's the texture? That's too big. That's not the right shape. His teeth aren't right. You go through all of that. Okay? Because it has to be on brand. It has to be authentic. Right? Even down to when you do your production samples, everything gets matched. Can't have that. Then this gets interesting in a sense of creating a whole line of products, not just one, right? So this was for an influencer named Lauren Rianaki. So she's a huge influencer for the DIY world. And so she approached us and she wanted a product line. Right? So she wanted a clothing line that was super easy, that would speak to her aesthetic. So, but she's not a toy designer, so she came to us, our expertise. Okay? So, in saying that, we had to look at the market, and what I did was I designed a whole bunch of different packages for her, different ideas. And then she picked what she liked, and then we worked together to make sure it fit her aesthetic and her branding. Okay? So this was, I think, a total of 12 SKUs ultimately, 12 different toys. We were all at Target, and she did how-to videos and all kinds of stuff. So working with an influencer is like a whole other level because you get immediate feedback from your audience, and they have expectations. So in talking about partnerships, this is an interesting partnership. So we work with IDEO. So not only do you work with licenses, internal brands, we actually work with inventors. So I know that IDEO is like a world-renowned design firm, but they actually are toy inventors. They have their toy lab. And so they come to us, and inventors pitch ideas, and then we, whatever resonates with certain brands, we make contracts and we work with them. So this was an idea that they pitched to us. It's called the Utology Flux Bar. It's about making your own cosmetics, custom colors for teen girls and boys. Okay? So this was a really interesting one because it's super complex with the mechanism. It's super complex because now you're dealing with cosmetics and kids and chemicals. That's a big challenge. And so sometimes when it's that challenging, it's easier just to go to Asia. Okay? So we went to Asia to work with our factories and our counterparts to be on site to do approvals and to work with the product. Okay? And then because this one was a pretty high investment, so it was a TV driver, which means we are dependent on a TV commercial to move this product, which is not often that happens. So here's a little glimpse of the TV commercial.
Utology Flux Cosmetic Bar Kit. You can create personalized makeup. So cool. Just pick your color, add your ingredients, mix it up, and show it off. Find the perfect shade. Look your mood or your look. You can make eyeshadow too. Love it. The Utology Cosmetic Kit built to suck it.
That was VR. Another partnership was with IDEO. On this one, this is Creative Cafe. So not only do we work with inventors, but you lean into what you know, and we don't ever know about food play. So we have to get expertise. So we work with another partner, Food Tech. You can have multiple partners on one project. Okay. So this one was really interesting. It's about being your own barista. It's a whole other level of complexity when you're dealing with food and ingesting something from a QA standpoint. But I mean, it's also really fun. I mean, someone's got to make those recipes, someone's got to test all that stuff. So it's pretty cool. And this was a TV commercial as well. Right? It's cool.
I have this question
Yeah, go ahead.
about commercials. So like when I was little, they blasted commercials all day long between every single show. Like, you bother your parents for these toys. But now since everything's like YouTube, streaming, Netflix, where do the commercials play?
Good question. So there are still like traditional TV commercials. Those will probably always be there, honestly. But you start to change your media spend, with marketing strategy running, to different media, including YouTube. Maybe you hire influencers. Maybe you pay for advertising. Maybe you pay to be in a toy catalog. Those don't just show up there. There's a rhyme and reason. There's a strategy behind it. So they started to look at different avenues. Definitely, YouTube is a big thing now. Influencers is a big thing now. So, but TV commercials, they're always.
You ever send free products to the influencers?
We send a lot of free products to a lot of people, right? People love a freebie, which equals sales. But yeah, I mean, you also want to get freebies to people because, thank you for your partnership. Also, look how cool this product is. We send a lot of stuff to a lot of people. We also send product to reviewers. There's a whole industry of toy reviewers. It's a part of the thing. So they can write reviews on it, help them others. Happy Meals. Oh, Happy Meals is a totally different level, which I'm gonna be honest, it's not fun developing a program for a Happy Meal. Because they have like no budget, they're like 3 cents, and you have to make something cool, right? That's like crazy. But in saying that, you're talking about like millions of pieces that are produced. So we do that. It's not for free. It's not a free giveaway as far as the manufacturer, but we do that. I don't know if that answers your question. So in saying that, that actually would be end of my presentation. So I'm happy to answer more questions because I actually really like them. So what's up?
Are there any environmental initiatives that kind of offset the massive production?
Oh, plastic? Yes. Yeah. So Mattel has a huge initiative. They have a couple of them. We have a whole division that's devoted to finding ways to be more environmentally sound. So Mattel also owns Mega Blocks, which is a competitor to Lego, and they made all their plastic plant-based. Also smaller things like the games group, which I work with as well. They started removing plastic cellophane from their cards. We try not to do blisters anymore. Blisters are the plastic pieces in front of toys. So yeah, there are huge initiatives. Also, Barbie has a new Barbie coming out. It's made out of like ocean plastics. So all that stuff is like in the works, and I think we have a commitment to by 2030, or maybe sooner, to be completely sustainable. What else?
I was wondering about the structure of your team. I might have missed it at the beginning, but with the product designers, does each designer get assigned a brand and they always design for that brand? And then the other part of that question is, do the designers working on the different brands, if that's the case, does one person do because toy design is different than other baby product design. Do they work on the character build like the CAD, and another person does the illustration, and another person does the engineering drawing, and so on?
So you probably missed it because I didn't really that level.
I just, because they're designers, so, that one of them might get one of those
Yeah.
jobs.
So how Mattel is categorized, and I hope this is is by category or play type. So we have a fashion dolls division, we have a vehicles division, we have our baby division, which is in New York, Fisher Price. Let's see, there's, and then within each one of those, so let's say the doll division, there are subcategories. There's a nursery doll team, baby dolls, fashion dolls, there are micros, Polly Pocket, there's new items. So any kind of new thing that we compete with Barbie, we also do make things that compete with us. Right? So there are teams in each one of those brands. You live in a brand. You live under the umbrella of a category. And then within that, as far as like what people do, yeah, I would say like the designer is the one that's like taking the time and having the vision of what we want to do, right? And then depending on kind of your skill set, like I'm not a sculptor, I am not. So, but I'm very good at organizing. So I would get the resource to then outsource my ideas and or direct my vision as a designer to other designers, to vendors, to freelancers, okay? And they bring back the artwork. I'm the one that's like pushing it to management. We should do this, yeah. And then from there, as far as like model making, there is a whole model that has anything you possibly want. So roto casting, 3D printing, metal and wood shop, like it is insane. So there are model makers, but there are also different makers. So does that answer your question? Yes. Yeah. So Mattel is, to be fair, is a giant machine, and it has very segmented goals. And everyone is a super expert in what they do, and so I'm not going to try to do something that I'm not expert in. So it has to be a little bit. Answer. What's up?
Yeah, what about project in your sophomore year? Why did that stick out in your mind so much?
I think it stood out because it was a toy project specifically. It was like, and the perimeter is really interesting to me. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but the whole like studying Da Vinci's and Leonardo da Vinci's inventions and translating that into a new product that's contemporary was really interesting to me. And you could really do whatever you wanted, and that's why I took arts and crafts. how I thought craft kits were made. I guess I didn't give it thought. So, you don't think about stuff, right? Yeah. You don't think about like, how do you make a marker? How do you make a crayon? I can tell you that too. Anyways, but, it just kind of resonated. And like I said, I went to Chicago and I had a great time in Chicago, but it was like 9 clear layers. It was totally different. I just kept thinking about that project. You know, we all come to points in life where like, you're like, is this the right thing? Are you doing this? And that's when you have to like lean on what you know and what you like. And then you just have to kind of go after it. So that one project has always stuck with me. Always. Probably just because I liked it. That's all.
How much freedom do you have to move around from divisions, or could you be in the all the way from division to every class, and then also do the different divisions that collaborate with each other?
Yes. And yes and yes. So you are designated to a team with certain brands and certain categories. Okay? Mattel is really interesting because it is so good that it almost is like a university. They really encourage people to learn and to try new things. And so that's why I have a unique background, because I had the opportunity to jump around. So you would apply to go to a different category. Or sometimes, you know, strategic thinking. Maybe a division is kind of suffering a little bit. We need a strategic thinker. This person's doing really good on this category. Let's put them over here. Let's strengthen the whole portfolio. Okay? What was the second part of that question? Oh, do you collaborate? Okay. So this is where I'm gonna be honest. It gets a little political. Okay? So everyone's got their own profits and loss report. Okay? So everyone's trying to figure out what they're doing, stay in your lane, you know. But there's certain divisions, like the value channel division, where because of the structure financially, they cannot afford to make $1 sales. They can't do it. Their overhead does not allow them. Okay? So they have to outsource the static to a different team. So me managing the value channel is a unique situation where I work with all the brand teams, like every license pitch that you have. That's very unusual. Usually, like, if you're a Barbie person, you're in Barbie. And in saying that, Barbie is crazy big. So if you're working on Barbie, you're not like making a Barbie horse and a Barbie greenhouse and a Barbie career. No, you work on Barbie estate, or you work on Barbie career, or you work on Barbie signature. There are teams and teams. It is huge. So, but like I said, if you want to learn something new, Mattel is very supportive. So I've gone from different brands and also totally different departments. So it's very unusual that I've worked in brand and marketing and in design, and I work with inventors. It's very unusual, but hey, if you want to do it, if there's a will, there's a way. In anything.
Okay, there's a question in here somewhere. So I understand the idea that like buyers have these relationships with, well, like, but formerly Toys R Us, I'm guessing, or like Target and like all these companies. And I'm also kind of wondering about like childhood psychology and like where does that fit in? And like if the buyer's driving so much, it feels like some of that design thinking, you know, that obviously you're very passionate about, like isn't quite making it into like a normal process, or it doesn't feel like that from thinking about it right now. But maybe like how does the company think about childhood psychology in terms of the choice it makes? Because even like the baby things that light up, like some people are like, those are bad because the child doesn't really understand why he's making that noise. You know, I love that. Like, so I'm just like, where does that play in how you guys think about choice?
Childhood psychology is a huge part of it. And I think that that's where everything that Mattel does first and consumer insights. So most of them are doctors or psychologists. Also, if you have like a STEM project or something, we bring in, you know, like doctors, especially from our testing, because it's especially valid, right? It's kind of like, it's interesting, when you're an expert in something, it's like a buyer may not like something, but they also are buyer and they're smart in the sense of like, as well as a leader in the industry, they know what they're talking about, so I would trust that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so they, so so it's like more if you get special, like into a particular part of a project, that's when you bring in.
It gets really, yeah, if you're doing a call out for, so it's a STEM project, especially for your brand. Like, brand people know what their kids are gonna do. Like, and like, for example, Hot Wheels, like, that's usually like a 5 and below. And then Hot Wheels, there's monster trucks that are real. There's like the racing kid, that's like a 5-year-old. And then there's like the track kid, and that's an older. Those designers and that team, it was all about the technology, development, finding this thing, all those kids are always there. Or the play racing, so there's a lot of piecing together, but it's, like I said, everything is strategic and meaningful, so nothing is done without thought and like research. And, yeah.
Kind of on that same thread, do you have a research team that basically spends their time doing focus groups and collecting that kind of information and bringing it back to the designers to try to create new product, to then bring it to marketing and then sales and then retail, even though there's nothing like that in retail already? Does that make sense?
So, first part of the question, are the yeah, there's several in different aspects of employee. So we have consumer insights about how the consumer interacts with employees. We have retail research. We can feed that into retailers to the point of like, in this aisle, it's this many SKUs, and in this category, it's this stuff, like, intent. So it's all very cool. The second part of your question,
I guess it just got me thinking when Laura asked that. It's kind of a similar question, but I was trying to think, like, when you have a really new idea that's never been tested in the market, especially in something like toy, I think it can be very hard to get in there. So, you know, how do they, I guess, is there ever space that you can convince the retailers to take you when there's nothing like that there?
it depends on what it is. So there are like those play patterns, those are like 4 play patterns. If you go outside of that, I think say, but it doesn't really feed into what kids do, right? So if you're gonna jump outside of that, I mean, you're gonna have oversight still in that because it's not just us that's not doing it, the toy industry's not doing it because it's not gonna sell, it's not gonna move because it doesn't feed into a full play pattern, right? As far as convincing a retailer to do something running, like for example, the beauty bar in cosmetics and DIY cosmetics, and the food label, those are tough sells, right? Because it's something that's not like a fashion ball play or whatever. But you test it, consumer insight, can you testing, appeal testing. So you bring all that information, and you're basically the salesperson. Marketing is pushing it to sales, sales is pushing it to the buyer. So every time you present, you are kind of pushing. You're signing him as a person. That's what it is. It's a pitch. It's a sales pitch all the time. I mean, that's up to you. It's a complex question.
Yeah.
This kind of goes with what they were saying. So, what about the toys? Like, I know that you say you come out with, you know, all these new lines, but obviously there are like these like established products and brands like Barbie, right? It's been around since 1960 or whatever. But okay, I don't really know where my question is here, but where does like something like this fall? And I know it's like Lego and you're not Lego, but so like when I was little, and maybe it's because I'm an architect and I don't like to follow directions either, but I don't understand, is there really kids that just want to buy like a Star Wars spaceship Lego just to put the Star Wars ship together and that's it?
100%.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
I'm a parent.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
The nuances of these papers and these play patterns is insane.
Okay.
But it's like these aren't like, oh, this kid could do this. I mean, there are passionate kids for this. Like,
Okay.
you know, collecting magic cards. Huge.
Okay.
Collecting mentality, putting things together. Huge. Like you wouldn't realize it, but yeah.
I guess what I was getting at is that more angled towards like the parents, because the parents like, oh, this would be cool. I don't know, but I guess not.
And there's different. The Lego, just going with the Lego example. Lego's interesting because the nostalgia, it is one of an adult brand too, honestly. So sometimes parents buy stuff that is like, you're gonna see that with Masters of the Universe, they just reprinted it. Kids don't know what the hell that is, but parents do. and so parents are gonna buy it for their kids, so like,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I guess the most honest answer is that if a kid doesn't like a toy or if it doesn't resonate with a kid, it doesn't matter what the parent thinks. The kid's not gonna play with it. The parent's not gonna buy something if it's just a waste of their money.
Right. I think it sells itself.
Yeah, so it's ultimately about the kid.
Okay.
Regarding accessibility, I know you mentioned that there's a whole section to offer like financial accessibility. But how does this all play into like also accessibility for people with disabilities?
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge. It always has been. I think it's just in recent years come a little bit more to light because they've always been a huge part of what they do. Because, you know, play should be fair for everyone, play should be available to everyone, doesn't discriminate and never should. And so usually, like it depends on the brand. Some brands that are bigger brands have a bigger budget to do more interesting, innovative stuff. So Barbie does a lot of, they did their whole thing. Barbies aren't just like regular Barbies anymore, but 10 years ago, they redefined all the body suits, all the Barbies, right? So Fisher Price, they just get a little people, just little people that have accessibility, there's one in a wheelchair, they want fits in their school. Right? So things like that. They did a Barbie doll, a braille packaging, right? So they are aware of that. It usually goes through a major brand, Barbie, probably Fisher Price, because they have a budget, and honestly, they have the need of cool, right? Some of them care about Barbie more than they care about Cake Club. Does anyone know Cake Club? No. But that's a whole toy line, right? So they pick and choose.
So, and all the branding talking I'm doing. And you talked about, the purpose of play, one of those being collectability. How much of that, especially like you're saying, like with the Mattel and He-Man, how much of that is even geared towards kids? Because like, I know that there could also be, there's like these shortages of toys that kids will never even get to play with because collectors come through and just kind of like scoop them up. And then like they eBay them for even more than what you'll see on the shelf. Is there any kind of, I guess, any kind of like, one, it seems like a competition to the toy company, but is there any kind of way that that's combated within the sales, I guess, to, again, so that it is more accessible, like, I bought Beastman and a Tila for my 3-year-old, this latest line, just because, again, the nostalgia, but also like, I knew that there was some other, I mean, I'm not seeing other kids looking at it, I was seeing like other adult males looking at it, it's like, swiping it off, but like, yeah, I could not find some other things for him, just because, there's some other guy who's talking to him on the internet.
Yeah, I totally get that. So we study what the consumer is doing, and we realize that parents like nostalgia, and so we actually created a whole Mattel Creations division that is all about designer and adult toys based on children's brands. So if they're high-end toys like, Masters of the Universe, all that stuff that are, they make specialty toys geared just for super fans. I don't think there's anything you can really do about like parents speaking up specifically with kid toy offerings, but we try to answer that by paying attention and giving them other options. Can I answer that?
Yeah, I get, I follow up that, you talk about this sort of like cycle, this short cycle. Is there ever like, oh, that did really well this season, maybe we should just keep continuing it this season because it's done so well and such a good design. When there did seem to be a shortage, or is it a matter of, well, that was a good run, but now on to the next idea.
If something is made and it's doing good and it's making money, it's gonna stay in the line as long as it's making money. Yeah. So a lot of the stuff, like when I say select and match, the marketing strategy, it's usually let's say you do a new brand and you do like, the market can maybe take in like 4 new SKUs and those do good. You don't get rid of those 4 SKUs, you build it out. Okay? Your whole point is to build out as many SKUs and product line as possible and have them resonate. And when you get to a point where you build out so many SKUs and it's kind of diluting, you're realizing it's kind of like, fluttering across lines, you start to make strategic cuts so that it's closed. Because that cuts down your production costs and your SKU management, so it's like constantly looking at it. Good question is that.
Yeah. I was kind of curious, what was your favorite toy when you were a kid, and what's your favorite toy now?
Good question.
So my sister's sitting back there. Growing up, I would say, and not necessarily.
Not Barbie. Yeah.
In general, we were kind of an arts and crafts family. We had like an art cabinet. I thought every family had like an art cabinet, or like it was just like full of art and certain down. I guess not. So we were art kids. I also was I was really into micro machines. They just came back, and I really love micro machines. I had a bunch of Ninja Turtles growing up. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mainly remember doing like a lot of art stuff. So, and my favorite toy now, oh god, there's so many. I couldn't pick one because I think I see so many, and I just don't even realize that they're available. That it's hard to pick one. What's up?
You talked a lot about how in designing toys you're making things that enable you to have like an impact like beyond yourself on kids and on the world.
Yeah.
And you also talked a lot about being part of a big company where profit margins are really important and capitalism, et cetera. And so I'm wondering if there are ever any challenges in reconciling those two things when they might come in conflict as you as an individual versus the or kind of a part of this larger money-making machine and how you get around that.
So, yeah, I get that question. That's a good question. I think the thing is like, obviously we all want to make toys and make money, but be quite honest for some people. But you find a company that you believe in their philosophy, and I 100% believe in Mattel's philosophy, and Mattel acts that way, but at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you make, everyone understands there's this company. It's about impacting things. So they make that very clear, and all the designers, everyone that works at Mattel, you ask them, that is their main purpose, to make you happy and make something that. So yeah, it's great to make money, and it's great to have all this PR and all this stuff, but people, you never lose sight of what that's for, which is, improving kids' lives and empowering kids. So you kind of get to the tension when you come at a level when it's like, you're sitting there trying to get approval on something, or you're fighting over, it happens all the time, you're fighting over like a penny in a meeting with like 75 people, and like it gets pretty heated. Yeah, that's when it gets a little bit shaky. So usually it comes down to, is this gonna make the toy better? Is this gonna make the experience better? If it's yes, that's what we go with. That's the deciding factor.
Can you share any development about the Mattel hoverboard? Like, is that in the works?
I cannot share anything about the development. That's not my team, that's not my place. Good try.
Have you had any big flops or like big,
Oh,
I would totally love to
story.
do that better this time?
Yeah.
Big insight.
There's a lot of big ones, you have to do big things. Big things are also equal big areas. So, I mean, honestly, the Arts and Crafts division is an example of that, because they got acquired. Technically, Rosa got acquired because they were, they were a part of Mega Bloks. So Mega Bloks owned Rosa in a weird way. Yeah. So Mattel bought Rosa.
They bought Mega Bloks.
They bought Mega Bloks
Okay.
to compete with them.
Okay.
So in saying that, that's not their core competency. So Mattel was plastics and toys really well. They're doing stuff that arts and crafts really well. So for a number of years, all the products that I did, as cool as they are, we didn't have a relationship with the right buyers. So in a store, every aisle, arts and crafts aisle, action figure aisle, all that, they all have different buyers. And you have to have a relationship. So we had a relationship with toy buyers. We didn't have a relationship with arts and crafts buyers. So that whole division, ultimately, as much as we tried and we tried to work on it, we didn't push it.
You're like saving that spot for somebody else that they normally go to, right? They fill that spot instead of like moving in.
Yeah. So they're gonna go with like, if there's a competitor that's making like all of their, arts and $5 arts and crafts from a systematic all this stuff was, okay.
Apart from the established brands and popular media, what are the inspirations for coming up with new products
What is the inspiration?
for new toys?
So it's looking at trend reports and what's happening in the market. It's also really interesting. So we have partnerships with a lot of outside trend reporting sources, and also relationships with certain trend and leaders that dictate the path of the industry. So what's really interesting about that is that you have to look at those reports and everything because you're not trying to design for what's really relevant and cool right now. You're trying to design for what's cool in 18 months, right? So that's where trend reports come in, and you have to research that and pay attention to the trend. So, like I said, it's all based on research and my certain partnerships, and honestly, all the toy designers are experts in what they do to recognize what's happening, and so that's not how they do it. Does that answer your question? Cool. What's up?
Have you ever been part of like a toy recall? And like what happens in the toy recall, really?
I have never had the pleasure of being part of it. So I never want to do that. I have not, but I mean, I will say from an internal standpoint, like they disclose everything. You know, I can tell like, hey, this is being recalled for this reason, and this is the action that we're taking. I don't technically know what happens in the recall besides the mess. I don't know. I've been working on that.
Kind of with that, have you ever had to, I guess, kind of reconfigure a toy, like maybe one that didn't sell, but you had that element that then you get reconfigured into some other part? Have you ever had to like kind of retool to go into a better line or more successful line?
So that's a good question. When you have to kind of like think about how much money you're spending in development. So there was one project where it was called this rotocaster. So it was this cool toy, and we had this proprietary powder. When you mix with water, it would solidify in 15 minutes, which usually project takes 24 hours. It was so cool. Lots of chemical testing, lots of QA, lots of development. That we did it for dinosaurs. Didn't work. You're not gonna scrap all that. You're like, oh my god, I gotta make this work. I gotta do this out. So we did it again, but we did it in tiny little glittery pets, right? And we took what tooling we could, and we changed some of the colors, we changed some parts of it, to like use what we got. Try to be smart about it. And that happens a lot, honestly, because you're just looking at, you're trying to be smart with your money, you're trying to be smart with your budget. It's always hard to develop a toy like completely from the ground up. And usually if you look at toys, you can see the basic pieces and parts from other places. So, and it's all because it's so big and there's so much learning in it, you can have one brand that learns from a totally different one, or, you know, uses the model from a totally different one and like puts it together. So that is one of the key benefits in creatively working for a big company is so many people are doing so much stuff and learning so much.
It's very interesting that you came up with the idea from a prototype. If you have kids in your office, your studio, play with them, you have one way here to observe them. So I'm curious, do you think this policy people call? Because when kids come into your office, they might be nervous, people watching them. So I'm just curious, do you do both or just you focus on your office observation?
We do all kinds of different observations. So we do in-home visits and testing, we do surveys. In the virtual world, we do a lot of virtual talking to kids. There's always a time for the same office running around. I would say, well, we do bring toys home. That is kind of a huge benefit of being a toy designer, is you bring all these toys home before anyone knows about them, they test them. I work with the games team on that, and the games team does it a lot because we even work remotely for 2 years, and so they can't get together to play and test games. So they take turns shipping prototypes to each other to all play with their families. They come together, they talk about it.
Okay, very good. I think it's just very fun to watch this presentation. It's amazing to learn so much in a few years.
Yes.
So, okay, so if you have other questions, you can stay, but let's thank Audrey for this. Eddie aware that it's not a good also in Texas. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
But you, so, no,
I've actually just used, huh? Yeah. What'd you use? It's a paper. I didn't really buy plastic papers and whiskey supplies. What do you need?
I used to sell online business and I just kind of.
I spelled
So, I used to be in this, well, I get associated with this. Like, yeah, let me know. It's kind of like,
well, I think I'm
nice to ask me something other than.
Okay, cool. I thought about.
Too big. Have you met on the front?
No, I haven't.
Can do it.
It turns out.
And, tell whatever you want, you know, that's all of your cohort.
Until it's.
You know, contact me, maybe.
Oh,
I would
okay.
love to hear from you.
Basically, the owner of the house. Is it drainage? No, so it's a setback issue. So like we're gonna have a single car, like driveway down there. But it's really, yeah, so, which is essentially here.
I will not contact you.
And if we.
But my home, my personal address is. And then